I essentially put out this content just so we can learn, and the goal is really what the topic is about: how to secure a job in tech, or how to secure a tech job. All right, we're going to look at, well, there's an employer and employee, story and analogy that is very important to help us kind of like see how important what we're looking at is, and then the stages to secure a job in tech in a tech company, and then we'll look at how to identify, okay, yeah, how to identify what stage you are, and then what to do to get to the offer stage and then get a job. That's like the final stage. And then we'll have an interactive section where we would ask and answer questions. Okay. Well, during the interactive session, I would really appreciate that we can mute our mics and ask questions, or maybe drop a message, drop a question on the chat. Okay, all right, so let's get started. Okay, so to practice this way. All right. Okay, so I'll share two stories with us, and like I said, it's important, it would impact what we're doing. All right. So the first one, okay, I'll say the employee story. When I would, either I would apply to companies, or I would have, hiring managers reach me, or reach out to me to, ask me if they can have a chat so that they can hire and all of that, right? Literally invite me for an interview. Okay. When I get into the interview, this is something that it was really crazy now that I think about it. But when I get into the interview, what I do is I sort of gloss over my experience and my skill sets, and the impact of the work that I have done, because I'm like, these people already have my CV, they already have my portfolio. In fact, sometimes they even reached out to me, so there's nothing for me to go so detailed. It's not like you're trying to brag or anything, but that modesty, trust me, it did help me, because after such an interview, after those kinds of interviews, I they would, I'll get a feedback that, oh, we can continue, the conversation. I'll get that kind of experience, and then after the interview, I'll get an email saying that, they can continue with the interview, with the hiring process for me. And because I felt that they already had my CV and my portfolio, and then maybe they even found me online themselves, right? Or maybe I applied with everything I thought was necessary. When it came to the interview, I should just gloss over. But the truth is, number one, they might have seen 100 other people and maybe sorted out 30 or 40 people that they are, having those first interviews with, just to narrow down the. Okay. The other thing is, they mean the person who who's interviewing you, or who invited you to the interview, may not be the only person that you're speaking with at the, like, during the interview. Okay, there could be other people who might have never seen your profile or your CV or your portfolio, or your articles somewhere, right? That you put out your work. Okay, so which is rather weird, right? That interviewers would come into, but that's the reality of it. To come into an interview for a candidate they're looking to hire, and when they ask you, tell me about yourself, it's possible that they actually don't know so much about you, right? They might not have looked at your CV as much as you thought, right? I mean, this is during the interview now, to have it in memory. Okay, they obviously will look at it before, before reaching out and all that, before inviting you. All right, then the employer story. This one it's kind of sad. All right, so early this year, I was hiring for a certain number of positions, and so one of the candidates I interviewed, great guy. We had such a good rapport and everything, but I wasn't. So typically, every time if I have to go into an interview, whether I'm the one interviewing, or I'm being interviewed, I will go with notebook and pen, all right, so that I will write. So in this case of, while I was trying to hire, so that I could write the, what do you call it now? If the interview, or there are apps now that will help you do that automatically, but I still go, like old school and organically, to write the information about the candidate and how he aligns with what I want. So maybe I just, okay, yes, this points here, communication is good. And I'll just put like a tick there and the person's name and email. Because after, I was talking about like I found the candidate that one of the people, because I was hiring for a number of positions, right? This particular person, it was interesting that after, I gave a thumbs up, I'm going to send a contract to him. I couldn't remember his name. I couldn't remember his email, nothing. I searched, I took 2 days because obviously when you're hired, you probably have like 400, 1,000 CVs and applications to look at. But, and some companies it's even more, right? But I couldn't find his name. So, I got to employ other people, right? But I really wanted the person. It's just that there were other people. And so typically after your interview, you obviously shouldn't just go and cross your legs and say you had a very good time with the interviewer. It's important that you are able to, maybe send an email across if it's something that you guys have talked on phone, maybe with hiring manager, you want to send, you want to call, you want to send a text message, things like that, so that they have you in mind. All right. And so and we'll be addressing a lot of all those, things, right? So the course, let me just quickly go to the table of content. Everything we're doing today is so that we can move from literally from whatever stage you are, but we're starting from like the very, basic stage or starting stage where you're just submitting your CV to when you're getting, an offer letter. I will try to cover that within the time we have. I feel we'll have a good time and we can get some things done. Okay. So moving on, there's something I put here, the right mindset. It's key. Okay. So I like memes a lot. If you look to the left, you say, why do I want this job? And it says, I've always been very passionate about not starving to death, and that obviously is not the best mindset you can use approaching your job. But these three things are highlighted just for the sake of this call. There are a lot of other things that that you should have in place. But the first one is that companies have problems. Now, I'm not saying that companies have issues, not so it's not in the way you're thinking about it. All right, when I say companies have problems, I mean that companies have, they have a need, they have a problem, they have a challenge that they are hiring for. So it could even be that they went to raise maybe $40 million. And so they have money, they told investors that they're going to scale the company, but the current team cannot do that, right? They need to hire more people. And so in as much as, yes, it's true, you need the job, according to the meme by the left, right? In as much as you need the job, the company also needs you. You need to walk into the interview, room, or if it's a virtual one, obviously most interviews are virtual. You need to walk into the interview knowing that they need you as much as you need them, right? It's that kind of relationship. It's not like they are doing you a favor to hire you, okay? And because of the fact that they have a problem, you also have to be that solution, all right? It's not going to be fair that they have a problem and then they just have to be nice to you to hire you, knowing that you don't. And that's one of the peculiarities about tech, okay? You're needed, all right? If you're not needed, there won't be an opening, right, for that position, okay? Then the second thing is that companies take a lot of risk to be and to stay in business, okay? Risk. Companies, personally, so I know I didn't do like an intro about myself. I feel like it's all over the website, but I'm the lead product manager and co-founder of Mech Health. So I run my own health technology company, all right? And there's a lot of risks, whether you're going to raise money from investors or from private investors or you're going to, scale your products, right? You're taking a lot of risks. Sometimes you need to align with government regulations. In healthcare and fintech, there are lots of them. So to be in business, there's a lot of risks, right? Every day you write a check for somebody, you need to pay for maybe the distributor, person supplying some kind of hardware. I know it's a software company, but we sometimes have to get hardware here and there. Okay. So because of that, you don't want to also be, part of the risks that the company is taking. I know that makes sense to you. But talking about like the right mindset, right? You don't want to be, like the company shouldn't be making a huge bet on you for nothing. Okay. Don't come out and show up like this is a risk, let's just try. Not many companies have the resources to just try. All right, to just try you out, while there are other candidates that show that they are lower risk and higher returns. And then the last thing there I put out is that there's no shortage of opportunities. Okay, contrary to whatever your experience might have been in your job search, there is no shortage of opportunity. Opportunities are everywhere. There's so much that, and I'm not making this up, there's so much that, the opportunities are begging for people to come, take those positions. I tell you the truth. Okay. So I could, use myself as an example. I still have recruiters reach out to me, or hiring managers, really, like, not big on recruiters, have hiring managers or heads of departments, reach out to me because, like I mentioned, I'm a product manager as well, right? So in as much as, yes, people are applying and they're getting rejected, companies are still trying to fill roles, so they're reaching out to candidates. It's kind of like the candidates hiring, the employer, applying to the candidate. I think that's interesting, and I'll show you how that works. By the way, it's not so difficult. I will show you within this call, yes, how it works. Okay. All right. So the stages to secure a job in a tech company. Number one, the pool of applicant stage where CVs and portfolios are submitted to the company. I was going to say that everybody starts from this stage, but obviously we see that some people don't start from here because some people just get invited to the culture fit. Companies reach out to them to see if they fit the culture or if they have like the general experience assessment, interview. Because, but the first stage is really, in quotes, where it starts from, right? CVs are submitted, maybe portfolios, things like that are made available, all right, to the company. And then the second stage is the culture fit. So typically, this is very standard for most tech companies. Okay, for certain roles, maybe like software engineer. Hello, maybe you want to mute your mic. For certain roles, maybe like software engineer, there may be a test, like a coding test, but generally this is, okay, just need to admit somebody. All right. So I was saying that, this, the steps on the stages, on the screen, right? They are the general stages that apply to most tech companies. Virtually every tech company runs through this. However, there could be a coding assessment for people who write code, right? It's going to be like a quiz, okay? Some kind of quiz, like an exam that you have to use an app to just answer questions, maybe multiple choice questions. All right. But so the second stage, we're looking at the stages, right? The culture fits or the general experience assessment interview stage. It's an interview, obviously. And the third stage is the case study or work assessment. So yes, you fit the culture, that's typically with the hiring manager or maybe the head of department. Sometimes it depends on the size of the company and all of that. But then the next stage is the case study. So they want to see your experience, to work. They want to see how you work. All right, your strengths and all of them. They want to see it demonstrated in a unique case that they will give to you. Okay. Aside everything that is going to be on your portfolio, this is just standard, is basic. You also help them filter candidates, right? And then the fourth stage, presentation, / defense of your work stage, right? That's where you wrote a case study, you prepared, maybe if it's a software engineer role, maybe you created an app. If it's a data analyst, you did something, you analyze some data, okay? but then you would be needed to present that work that you did right on the case, and then possibly defend it. All right, they'll ask you questions, usually interactive, and then there's a final interview, usually either with the head of the department or with the owner of the company, right? Depends on how big the company is, and the founder or the co-founder or the CEO, right? Depends on that depends on, of course, on how big the company is, and could be with maybe vice president of the department or something. And then the last stage, of course, is the offer stage. So that's the stage where you want to get to. Obviously, you have you get an email with a document, right, that has all the legal documents and phrases that say that, okay, you can start working right at so date, sign here, see if it's good for you. You typically would run that by your lawyer, have like, if the deal is not good for you, you want to negotiate the terms of work and all of that. But that's obviously what you want to get to, and then you start working. All right, so let's make progress. Okay, so how to identify what stage you are. This is crucial, of course. Number one, you have to look at your experience and feedback in your search for a job. Now, when I say your experience, I don't mean like your work experience. I mean like the job search experience. Okay, when you apply to a job and you don't get invited to the interview, obviously you're at you stop at the first stage. All right, and then we'll just quickly go over to the job quiz after that, but let's just go through the steps. All right, so you have to be honest with yourself, of course, when you're identifying what stage you are. Okay, say, look, I'm good, but I haven't been able to communicate it on my CV. The first stage doesn't mean that you don't have experience, and we'll go through that. All right, for some of you who went through the quiz while you were registering for the webinar, that's a plus. That's a good one. All right, so analyze your experience using the job quiz. So let's just quickly go to it. Let's go to it. Oh, it's going to say that since I'm the admin. All right, so let's see. What has your job search experience been, or what has your tech job search been for you lately? The experience, right? Okay, so we'll just take the first one and then we'll walk through the solutions. All right, so ready to send. Okay. Thank you, Zoom. All right. So I'll skip this because I can. Okay. So maybe we'll just do this and then the next one. All right. Okay. So typically stage one, you are entry level for the jobs you're applying. Entry level doesn't mean that you have no experience. It just means that you're entry level for that particular role. Maybe you were somewhat a product marketer and you're moving to data analyst position. Okay. So you're entry level, and then you've not communicated your experience adequately in your CV, and then you get lost in the pool of applicants. Okay. So to address this, you need to just learn how to communicate how to measure your work and communicate that in your CV. So there's a tool here and there's a recommendation. All right, and then it says, let's say, okay, so entry level. That's the first one. Let's see if we can do one more. Okay, let's check this one. Take quiz. So we'll just do this one and then we'll move on. Skip. All right, so this is where I was explaining, right, that you're good, but you come into an interview and you don't communicate yourself, your experience and your skills properly, you still get lost in the pool of candidates. So let's just, we can go through, so that is accessible just on where you registered for the webinar. So we can go through that. Let's just make progress with the steps. Okay, so what to do to get to the upper stage, right? So we know the stages, and then we have the app there, it's on the page, so that we can do that. But what to do to get to the upper stage? So what to do to get to the upper stage and actually get a job? So I said that getting a job is an art. Why is that? Because it's not even about just being skilled or being able to, or being experienced or being able to, to do your work, right? It's beyond that. It's really an art that requires certain elements, and I'll be sharing those elements in the next couple of slides, okay? Of course, it starts with you. This is, I'm hoping maybe 60% of the people on the call have addressed this, aspect, right? But it starts with you, right? You need to select an industry, okay? When I say select an industry, I mean select an industry. You cannot be everywhere, all right? You cannot be, you're here, you're there, you're in the other place and all of that. No, you have to be within a specific industry. So your portfolio shouldn't just have, you did something in fintech, you did something in, it doesn't make you look cool as much as you thought, right? It is something in ed tech, something in health tech. It's just everywhere, okay? If you're applying to a specific industry, then let's say ed tech, right? Education technology, then all your projects, your experience and everything, of course, maybe not all your experience, but most of it should, or your most recent experience should be clearly stated, right, as from that industry, okay? And then the next thing I said here is develop a set of skills. Well, like I said, I'm hoping that a lot of people on this call already have developed very specific and relevant skills, but that's needed because, like I said, companies have a problem. You have to have the skills to solve that problem for which they're hiring. All right, and then lastly, I said you ensure you can actually do the job. Okay, so this is not a cut the corner scheme. You need to know how to do the job. All right. Okay, which is pretty simple. There are lots of open source solutions, free solutions on the internet, maybe like this call as well. All right, that can help you teach you how to do your job. Okay, the next thing after, like I said, it starts with you. The next thing is you need to measure your work and your skills is very important. Work and skills is your work and your skills measured. They're measured in impact and accomplishments, which in turn is measured in numbers or percentages, right? You cannot say you worked here and then there was no impact. You didn't accomplish anything, and then you want us to hire you, or you want somebody to hire you in some other place. You need to go and measure your work in terms of the impact that you made. And very simple, right? How so I built this tool. It's like a simple and straightforward tool that would help you, measure. This is it here. Right? I'm looking at the time, but this is available. It's not a hidden. It's a free tool I built. Right? It's not hidden somewhere. I'd make it available just in case you haven't found it yet. Right? But this is, you just put your, the role you're applying for. Let's say data analyst, right? And then just go on to fill. So this is, I just want to walk us a little bit through this because a lot of us are not used to measuring our work. We just maybe at best report our task, right? Okay, I did this today. I did this last week or whatever. This is what I worked on. But measuring your work is a whole different kind of thinking for a lot of people. Okay, so the prompt here is, what one thing you accomplished in this position? All right, and then I say your answer should contain number. There's a prompt. There's an example here. Your answer should contain both number and percentage, or both. All right, so there's an example here. So that I increase employee participation by 39%. Let's just put something there. Reduce churn. Churn is like loss of customer. Reduce churn rates by. So you see that until you put like a number by 13, the next prompt doesn't show. I'm just walking you through this 13%. I'm just walking you through this so that you can do it by yourself. All right. And then what did you do to get there? Whatever you did, right, to get that accomplishment. And then, oh, yes. Okay. So you have to, the prompt here, you have to start with by redesigning, all right, Okay, somebody is joining now. I'll just admit. All right. So follow the prompts and then you do like 2 bullet points. Okay. Do like 2 bullet points and then it's just two. The next accomplishment and then the next prompt. And then you save that. Let's just quickly get on. Okay. So I said demonstrate your skills through industry specific projects. All right. And this is where, this is one of the places where people who say, or people who are faced with the experience paradox. I don't have experience. I don't, or you get to interviews and they tell you that you don't have enough experience. This is what you need to do. Don't just send your certificates. If you're applying, I'm not playing down on certificates or on trainings like that. They're very crucial, right? But when you are enrolling, let's say you're enrolling in a course on maybe Udemy, you see like 1 million other students took that course, maybe 50,000 enrollees for that month. I don't know if you've noticed it, but it's there. Okay. And so your certificate is not enough, right? And most of these certificates are really focused on they are certificates of completion, not necessarily your ability. Do you understand what I just said now? Those certificates are often given because you completed the lessons, not because you understand, not necessarily because you understand and can do the job. Okay, so you need to demonstrate what you know, what you've learned through a very specific skill project. I beg your pardon, and that project must be in the industry. I said industry specific. In the industry you're looking to get an opportunity for. Like I give an example, the person who maybe their last 4 projects have been in a particular industry, maybe oil and gas tech, right? The truth of the matter is that they are even stronger. Can you mute your mic? So they are even stronger in the ability to understand the problems facing that industry. All right. With regards to projects, you need to understand. So virtually every company, right? Every tech company was founded by 1 or 2 people, or 3 sometimes. But primarily, most of them are founded by 1 or 2 people. Okay. And so because of that, you need to understand that those people were trying to solve maybe one problem. You need to understand what that problem is in the industry or with the company you're looking to apply to or you're looking to work with. All right. And that's where your projects, whatever projects you're working on, would be around the problem you're addressing. Whether or not you have 10 years experience somewhere, right? If you don't have 10 years experience somewhere, but you have projects and that's the next thing I'm talking about. Let your documentation be very detailed. Very detailed. By the way, I have templates for all these things for projects and all of that, and I'll come to that like after now. But let your documentation be very detailed, okay? So that it demonstrates your skills, your thinking pattern, right? Your thought pattern when you worked on the project. You see, I'm not teaching you a shortcut per se. I'm just teaching you the outlines that eventually gets you a job. When I have hired people, I've actually met very amazing people through they built something. Since I'm in the healthcare space, health technology, they built something in health technology as their portfolio and posted it, maybe on a community, and we'll talk about that shortly, right? Maybe in a community on LinkedIn or on Telegram or wherever, Facebook. I see it. I'm like, okay, this is good. This may even be the direction. You can imagine somebody building something that is going in the direction that you as a company and is well documented. It doesn't look like something they just did anyhow. It shows that they know what they're doing. Right? I've met people, to work on projects with me because of that. And it's often that because I also consult for companies, right, in terms of products in other industries that I've either had previous experience in or they are kind of adjacent. They're not too far. Okay. if I'm looking for people who are going to work, and because some industries are new, and I'll come to that shortly. Okay, some industries are new and still emerging. But they're the people who I would want to, and the same thing with you too, right? There's a guy I met, Pani. I'll just mention his name. I'll tell him I mentioned his name. He's really good and upcoming, and he showed me a project that he worked on. The project was so detailed that if I was going to hire for a position for that specific skill, I would hire that person, like straight up, as opposed to somebody who may have more experience but hasn't even demonstrated it. All right. And which is maybe similar to what we'll be talking about next. When you have a skill set, maybe you can do certain things. You're a designer, you're looking to be a designer and all of that. You've learned all these things. You're taking courses. Nobody knows that you can do those things unless you demonstrate them, because you have to demonstrate what you know through a project, through a very specific project. And because there is this thing, there's no perfect product. All right. If somebody gave you the first version of Google from whenever it was founded, you won't be able to get much value out of it or use it as much as the product today. The product is always evolving, and that's one thing with tech, right? That I was going to say. The tech is driven by innovation and learning. Okay, so sometimes you're smart enough to identify problems that either during the hiring, sometimes the company states that this is why they are trying to hire. They have this problem. Is there? So if you can further understand that, and even from your interviews, from your portfolios, whatever you're sending to that company, you demonstrate that, and then of course through a project, right? You demonstrate it. It will give you a huge edge. I can tell you from my own experience, and I could tell you from like my experience hired and my experience, being employed, right? Okay, so let's make progress. And then the next thing here is you need to educate your industry. That sounds interesting, right? You need to educate your industry. And what that does, it helps you stand out or come out, right? I mean, obviously the person who is teaching seem to be I'm using that word very specific, seem to be the smartest or the most knowledgeable person. Even though some people feel like, if you know something, you be quiet. Not necessarily. In this case, I'm talking about in the superficial now. When you're talking about a particular problem, and you're talking about the solutions that you're creating, and maybe talking about how you're creating those solutions, you're the experts, whether anybody likes it or not. You're the experts in that industry. So yes, you're a graphics designer. By the way, I just admitted somebody. It's a graphics designer, just in case you're asking why I use that example. Okay, so you're a graphics designer, but we don't know that you're a graphics designer because you only put it on your bio, graphics design or graphics designer. It's not enough, right? Because there are 1 million other graphic designers out there. There is something that I did mention in a different, like in the course, that have you ever wondered why Indians have videos for almost everything and tutorials on YouTube, on everywhere? So particularly if you write code, you have an issue with your code, I can assure you that within at least at most 1 day, let's say it's a difficult and impossible problem, within 1 day of putting your problem on. So for people who write codes, there are platforms like Stack Overflow. Within 1 day of putting your problem that you're facing on Stack Overflow, an Indian will reach out willing to even have a Zoom call with you to resolve that issue. Even if they can actually, over time they can, but sometimes they really can't. Some of them cannot, but they offer that help, and then it adds up to the fact that they are building a robust experience in how to address problems. In fact, they're intrigued by those problems because they are willing to educate the industry. And you often realize I went through, so I had joined some other senior product managers to take a product management course, and I realized that even creating my course content and all of that for that course on product management, actually helped me make sense of some of my own experience that I already had, in the industry, in the field. Okay, to communicate it better, and that's something you want to also do. So when, like I mentioned, when you create educational resources, these are resources that people, or content that people would learn from. All right, within the skill. Yes, you're a graphics designer or you're a product designer. You share some of the ways and how you solve your problem. Is one of the, so I was talking about sharing with you how hiring managers come to. It is one of the ways. When you create educational resources, you kind of look smart. That's one of the things. If you have to work in Google, you create resources and educational materials for communities, right? For people who need it. Isn't that simple and interesting? Okay, I think that's, we're getting to the end of this. Let's see. Okay, so 3 methods to getting a job. This should be very close to the last slide. Yeah, we'll just have 2 more slides and we're done. All right, so the first one I mentioned here is make the jobs come to you, and that's not so difficult, right? We've talked about most of these things. Your very specific industry portfolio or projects, right, that you do, you communicate that on your social media, primarily LinkedIn and maybe Twitter, but you can do it in as many places as possible that you have access to, right? And of course, you can apply online. So if you follow the steps that we showed from the starting of this call, how you create the bullet points using the tool that that's embedded on this slide. Okay, I will make the slide available as well after the call. Right. So when you create, your CV, I usually do like a free CV review when I have time, right? But you need to create your CV and have like an expert review it. But the tool help you. The tool that is on the other slide help you, create the CV that actually gets you interviews. All right, and then you apply online, right? You get invited. Oh, yes, something I didn't mention. You need to be able to learn to do interviews, like actual answer questions, ask questions during your interview. It's a skill, it's an art. Like I said, getting a job is an art. So it's something that you're going to learn. There are mock interviews for virtually every kind of role in tech. Mock interviews for software engineer, because sometimes if you're having an interview with a what do you call it now, a recruiter or hiring manager, you may not necessarily need to write code. You may not be asked to write code. In fact, writing code won't help you there, even if you can write the best code. But can you communicate your thinking pattern as to how you write good code during an interview? These are things that you would learn. So maybe at this point, I would just say that so on the page where you're registered for this, I have like a course that puts all these resources, right? The templates, and then the specific, some of the tools are already here, but the specific, what you call it now, resources that point you, okay, in that direction. You want to check it out, right? You want to look at it after now. Talking in an interview is not the same thing as doing your work. And if you can do your work, but you can't talk in an interview, you can't present, it's not about bragging, but you have to do it in a very confident way. You have to communicate what you've done in a very confident way that demonstrates that you're the person that they're looking for and all that. And then lastly, I said reach out to hiring managers. So yes, still on the course, there are templates. There are templates for messages, templates for portfolios, templates for what else is there? Projects, templates for almost everything. CV templates. I think the CV template is also available on this slide. All right, but all those things are there so that you're able to take everything I've shared right now and actually put them into practice. Okay, but with what we've said so far, you typically would use LinkedIn for this last one, reach out to hiring managers and with your portfolio. Use LinkedIn ideally when you're sending a connection request. I don't know, people just like send you connection requests without any message, right? Whether they're trying to hire you or they're looking for a job or just connecting with you. it could work, but you know that if you know how LinkedIn works, right? Recruiters and maybe people who own tech companies have like a lot of followings. So that may not help you to just you get lost in the crowd of people sending them requests. Right? You want to this it's not like it's not a thing, but some people don't know how to do it. Like add a message to your connection request and send it. Okay, but there are message templates anywhere on the course, and you want to check that out. I think this is the last one. Yeah, so Q&A interactive session. All right, so I would entertain questions now. You have
Okay.
questions. You have yeah. All right.
All right. My name is Desmond. I want to ask you some few questions.
Okay, that's one. Thank you for
All right.
joining. Yeah.
You mentioned about reaching the hiring manager with your portfolio. Am I right?
I can hear you very well. By the way, I like the fact that I could hear like your paper move, like you were writing. I really like that.
All right. You made mention of
Okay,
reaching.
so the question, yeah,
Can you hear me right?
I can hear you very well. Yeah.
All right. Reach the hiring manager with your portfolio. You made mention of
Yes. Yes.
that.
Mm,
All right. Sometimes you work with teams, sometimes you work as a freelancer,
yeah.
and sometimes most of the projects you build sometimes end up being scrapped. It all
Okay.
depends on whom the person is who owns the project you're working for.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
know, I've read, I used to take time I built an e-commerce platform for somebody,
Yeah.
and the person, out of one or two, didn't commence with the project any longer.
Mm,
So, though I didn't push that code to GitHub, that was one of my problems I had then, sure. And lost the whole of that code.
okay.
Now, you're talking about creating a portfolio for at least, so your managers can reach you out.
Mm,
And let's assume you're applying for an industry that really wants somebody that's gonna take in the position of a full stack
okay.
that is responsible to cover an e-commerce something of that nature.
Okay.
And now you don't have, would I say, or the deployed source code is deployed to either Heroku, any of them. I believe of recent, I think Heroku even stopped their free deployment for some time ago. I don't know
Okay.
if not sure.
Yeah.
Now, how do managers tend to understand that? Yes, you've done these things before, because plenty persons will tell you, okay, include the URL in your CV, so
Okay.
they can actually click and tends to preview your work.
Okay.
So how does one scale through this? How will I say it? Let's call it a
Yeah.
block or a bridge.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you very much. I think that's a very specific problem or question. And the first thing I talked about, right, is documentation. I mean, aside the project being very industry specific, I talked about documentation. Okay, so documentation is more detailed than even a URL, a link to the project. Okay, it's more detailed, and the truth is, so a very good example is when I worked in oil. It's a very funny example. When I worked in oil, because it's unrealistic. When I worked in oil and gas tech, one of the softwares we built, one of the softwares we built, listen, is a $4 million a year software license. You don't think
Okay.
that I would put the source code online for anybody? Do you understand?
Yeah, I
And of
understand.
course, this kind of project, there are lots of people working on it. So what would I do? Okay. My documentation as to the work I did is going to be I have some templates I'll show you. Well, it's on the course, right? But it's very detailed that describes exactly what I did, how I did it, without necessarily sharing any secret about the company. I mean, of course, the company website is there and all of that. But you don't even have to. I've seen some people's website, some people's portfolio, they just maybe talk a little bit about the project and show a link to it. Now, there's a place for having live projects, right? Especially as a developer. And there is Netlify in case you need to
Yeah,
put
I
some of
understand.
your projects online, right, by yourself. Okay. And there are projects that you would replicate them, right, and make available on your, for as per live link, or make some of it available as per live link for somebody to look at. But more important is that documentation that captures your thinking pattern while you worked on the project and the work that you did, and then the impact of the work that you did. Okay, that's
Okay.
that's what would differentiate somebody. Let me tell you something. I can get, maybe a portfolio template of a website, right? And write, I did this, maybe like 2 or 3 paragraphs. All right, maybe that's how some people's portfolio, let me mention names. And then I put a link to the website, even if I've never seen that company before. And I can put 10 like that and say that's my project. It's easy to gloss over that, right? But if it is something that the documentation is detailed, I'm thinking about an almost 30 to 40 pages documentation for one project. Now, you do an overview so that anybody that wants to get in, so there's an overview, they read a little bit about it and then they go in, and then it's crazy, but it communicates that this person, did the work and they know what they did, right? And then it's properly documented and reported and all of that, the styles you use, the standard methodologies, maybe for you who or software engineering, the coding practices are right. That obviously is different from, because like I mentioned, there are, like in the example I gave, right? You're not going to, in fact, you could probably face a lawsuit for doing that, right? Putting, maybe either source code or link to a software that a company pays $4 million per year for, for the license, right? For their team. It's illegal to put that on your, like to put a link to for somebody to go and use that and test it. All right. So, but if again, I didn't work in engineering. I work in the product design and product management, aspect of it. But if say I was, one of the engineers there, right, at that time, I won't still need to put the code online, because you know how these things work. You may not be the only person with access. You may just have like access to your own part of it, which is not the whole. If you deploy that, you may not be able to, for big projects like that anyway, you may not be able to have anything, but you can either create a similar version, saying that because of copyright issues, you have a similar version, like, or a smaller, version with fewer functionalities, but your project documentation is very detailed. Does that answer your question?
Yes, 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 it does. And okay,
Okay.
let me give a moment for other persons to ask. Then I think I also have another question to ask.
If you have another question, you can ask. But if somebody has another question, they can also ask it. So
Okay, now,
go ahead. Yeah.
all right. Like I, for one, myself, I would say for myself, I wouldn't even love to work in. Will I say, I wouldn't love to work in on site. Like I've always wished for what is it called, freelance. I always like
Freelance or remote.
participating. Yeah, remote, anyhow you want to call them.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah, now this comes into play. A lot of Nigerians are having freelance, and basically it's almost all the foreign companies outside there that hires freelance, and getting into them tends to be difficult. I don't know if their pattern of CV applying out there is quite different from the one you apply out here. I have applied for numbers, and it always turns up like with your CV, and so you can continue, like you said earlier, we can't continue with your application here and there, and that's all.
Okay.
So does it really mean that at CV to foreign companies also matters or what?
Okay. It's not
Can I hear
really
that?
because of where the company is. All right. It's because your CV doesn't communicate the impact of your work. All right. Like we looked at
Okay.
earlier. Yes. So the thing about CVs, let me just talk about that a little bit. The thing about CVs is that the CV is kind of like a news, like an advert, either the news or an advertising, post. And how do I mean? When you hear the news, right? Although the news is usually bad news, like news generally is usually bad for whatever reason, but sometimes it's good news. But when you hear the news, even if you don't know, even if you've never heard anything about that industry, you know what they're talking about. Let me give you an example. So when you hear the news and you hear that 500 people were displaced from their houses due to an earthquake in New York or wherever earthquakes are more. All right, you you don't need to know what an earthquake means, or you don't need to have like a degree in earthquakes, in studying earthquakes. But once you hear that 500 people were displaced, it sounds like something is serious here. If your CV just contains maybe some jargons that are very even technical, and then it doesn't contain the impact. Like I said, so we have a slide where we talked about, let me see. Are we there? Okay, I think it's forward. We have a slide where we talked about the impact of the work. Yes, this is measuring work. The impact and the accomplishments. If your CV doesn't contain these things, and it's always in numbers, and then it's in numbers with either percentages, or maybe you saved 400 minutes. Because of your design, you increased the company's revenue by maybe 20%, or you generated $400,000 through a landing page that you designed that took you 40 minutes to design. Do you see that you want to hire yourself right now from what I just said? So that's what should go on your CV, those bullet points. And we have, so if you click on, when you get this slide, you click on this, it'll take you to the resume, AI wizard. You just follow the prompts, put your experience there, and then when you're done, send me your CV, all right, for me to just review. Okay, but you understand the news when you hear it. You don't need so much of a specific industry experience to understand maybe the president of a country was shot by this, maybe two unknown gunmen or something. All right, it shows the impact of it. You don't, in fact, even if you don't know what it means to be shot, you just know that is serious and that's critical. So that's the missing thing. If that's the experience you've had during your application, it doesn't mean that you're not skilled enough, right? It doesn't mean that you don't have enough experience. Now, it could mean that, right? Because it could be in the industry you're applying for, you don't have enough experience. That's why I said, in everything you're doing in your job set, try to be specific in an industry. Let all your projects, your posts, your examples, your whatever. Let's not be from any industry and every industry. Even if let's take for instance AI. AI in itself is not an industry. So when I say industry, I mean education technology, health technology, finance technology as fintech. Do you get agro tech, agricultural technology, biotech, biotechnology, and things like that? Those are industries, right? AI in itself is not exactly an industry, although there are.
Yeah.
Okay, we have this notification again. So we have to. Does anybody else have another question? I feel I've answered the question very well. Does anybody else have another question? So that okay, somebody's hand is up. Yeah, go and unmute your mic and ask.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is
Good
Prince.
afternoon.
Okay, sorry I joined late. But the little part I've gotten, I think I've learned quite a lot. Wow. Especially this industry part. I didn't even know that there's anything like oil and gas tech.
Yes, that's good. Yeah.
So okay, so if you are starting out as a tech person that wants to get these tech jobs, talking about the industry, how do you know the industry that you want to focus on? Like, how do you get to know all these industries first of all? Then you now, just like I said, I didn't know that there's anything like oil and gas tech. So how do you do your research to know this industry, then start working? I also learned that you need to create content that is related to that industry. You don't create content randomly. So how do you Like, how can you know the industry that suits you best? Then start working towards.
Okay. All right.
Then
So
on
thank you so
LinkedIn,
much,
if
man. Yeah.
let me ask a second question. So if it's
Okay.
on LinkedIn, one is looking for these jobs. So who exactly will you reach out to? If you have chosen your industry, and okay, apart from creating content, how do you reach out to those persons that will hire you for the role you are applying for? Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Prince. So I'm writing your question just so I can answer the second one. Possibly identify how to identify and reach out. Okay. So I'll just quickly answer those questions. Well, how do you find the industry? It's not hidden. You do your research, right? You Google stuff, you have ChatGPT, but just go with Google. And so, but you just do a Google search for industries, right? But much more than that, when you at least you know where to generally find job opportunities, right? Either on LinkedIn Jobs or Indeed, or there are lots of job platforms. Okay, so those jobs, let's say you're a product designer, right? The jobs you're seeing that are more, this is very practical, that are more from the industry. Let's say you don't have an industry in particular in mind. The industry that is hiring for that position the most, right? That skill that you're interested in developing to that level, right? Those are like the industries that are probably more juicy. Okay, those industries that are hiring for that particular position for you, and typically, I'm hoping that like everybody has a BSc or something. But even if you don't have a BSc, it's an interesting, right? But if you do have, even if it's just an educational qualification you have, or you have some previous experience, it will be easier for you to get into an industry that closely aligns with the one you already have a background in. Okay, maybe you don't want projects, even if it's not related at all. You don't want projects to something. That's may likely be the one, at least one of the major industries. If you have to play around with two, but I always recommend get to one. I get to one eventually, okay? Because you don't have all the time in the world. All right, that's one. You just do a Google search, and then you see industries, you learn about them. There's something called Crunchbase. Crunchbase has information about all the companies, virtually all the companies in the world, who is hiring, who is not hiring, who is raising funds rather, and all of that. There's Angel List. I could add this in the notes, all right, and share with everybody. There's Angel List, there's Crunchbase. It has information about companies. You see companies, you see companies that are raising $40 million, $100 million, $200 million. Those are the companies that obviously have very good futures. Investors are confident about them. Obviously, typically, the investors fund represents the customer, the confidence the customer has in the product or in the industry. Okay, it's often like that. Sometimes it's not so, but it's often like that. Then the second question is, how do you reach out? Okay, and who do you reach out to? How do you identify them? Well, very simply, on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is just one of the platforms. LinkedIn has this categorization for companies where you have people or companies who have between 11 to 50 employees. That's a very good spot. There are companies that have 200 plus, right? For in case you don't have experience, you don't have much experience, but you have like a very solid portfolio. When you see companies either hiring or they're accessible on online, those companies that have, so when you go to visit the company page, you see 1150 employees in the company. I don't know if you've noticed that, but you pay attention to when you view a company's page and go to the about section.
Yes,
you will see that. I have. Awesome. So that's a very good spot in identifying companies. But there is a list. There's a document. I'll send that after now. There's a document that contains like almost maybe 200 or 300 plus companies, or it's up to 1,000 companies that are hiring remotely, because some companies don't hire remotely. Okay, companies are hiring remotely, particularly if you want remote jobs. So that is accessible. It's not a hidden information, right? It's accessible. I'll make that available. Okay, so you can identify, and then the people who the people who you reach within those companies are the top executives, maybe founder, co-founder, maybe CEO, maybe talent. You see something like talent. What do you call it now? Talent acquisition specialists, people like that within the company.
Yes, talent
or
acquisition
hiring,
specialist.
Yeah, or the hiring manager altogether. So those are the people or people operations, things, positions like that. That kind of coordinates hiring. And also, but very specific, these companies to get across to the CEO of the company or the vice president of the department you're applying for or you're looking to get a job with, it's easier and they're accessible easily on LinkedIn.
Okay,
all right. Does anybody have another question?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. I want to ask one question, one last question before.
All right. Yeah. Before our 2 minutes expires, yes, go ahead, please.
All right. You talk about channeling your CV and knowing how to address companies. Does it really mean that one has to, whenever you want to apply, let's assume that you are a software engineer,
Okay.
you focusing on product, and I believe product has to do with almost everything. Right? So I believe every company goes is to sell his or her product, except the academic section or the health section. I want to store some information. So why that's not really point of contention right now. Okay. Now, is it that if you let's assume you're applying to the oil and gas sector, when you get and you've worked for some similar cases, either you just been in the house, I want to code about them. I know there are sometimes I'll be like this, I'll just say, okay, let me just code about this stuff. And I'll just code about it, test functionality. Sometimes I'll even end up listing the laptop file, I don't care. But I just know I can still do that anytime I want to do that.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
Now, you want to apply for oil and gas, you change your CV to that which focus the oil and gas. Am I right?
Yes.
Now you want to apply to a food industry. Okay. You also change your CV to a food industry.
You have like different CVs, but that's why I said you should pick an industry. Tops, maybe 2, right? So that you have like 2 CVs. But even within those 2 CVs, you would still adjust your CV. Your industry, you still adjust your CV often to the description of the. This call is about. By the way, I think we've spent enough time. But you still adjust your CV, to the responsibilities. If it doesn't correctly align with your own, you still adjust it, right?
Okay. I think I get that point right now.